What's next? Wednesday. Thank you. Today, January 8th, 2025. What's Next Wednesday is a family program designed to help families and caregivers support their secondary age students as they plan for life after high school, from finding the right fit to navigating financial aid. This process can be stressful for our students and the adults in their lives. Topics vary monthly, and we address the many things that you and your students must navigate as you make this decision. Today's speakers are Gary Down, and a contributor will be Dorita Dawkins. Gary Downs, former NFL running back, played for the New York Giants, Denver Broncos, and Atlanta Falcons from 1994 to 2000. After a standout career at NC State University, post NFL, he transitioned into coaching, serving as running backs coach and recruiting coordinator at East Tennessee State University, where he developed record-breaking players. Now, Gary is an area representative for Fellowship Christian Athletes in Gwinnett County and a partner with Born to Compete, supporting youth sports development. He is married to Tanya Shorter Downs, and their 3 children, Cameron, a medical student at Wake Forest University, Josh and Caleb have excelled in athletics in college, and Josh reaching the professional levels, and Caleb to soon follow. Gary remains deeply committed to faith, family, and mentoring through sports. The Renee Ratcliffe Dawkins, Assistant Vice Chancellor and Chief Diversity Officer for Athletics at the University of Arkansas. And she's a native of Virginia Tech, and that's how I know native. And the way I know Gary is through playing with him and him being a mentor of mine and all those good things. And I appreciate him being here for this session. Gary, thank you, and I appreciate having you and coming out and speaking on this topic that we so need to help our parents just understand the scope and getting the kids that are trying to make this next step in their life actual reality.
Thanks for having me, Ken. I look forward to tonight. We're talking about scholarship, NIL, and the portal. Used to give 85 scholarships. That number this year is going to go up to 105, but not all schools are actually going to give out 105 scholarships. The FCS schools can give 63. What's happening with the number of roster numbers dropping down from 120 at the Division I level down to 105, it's going to affect a lot of players, because when you have 120 guys in your roster, that's 15 players that are going to have to find a new home. You're going to have to find a new home at the Division I FCS level, at Division II level, or Division III levels. And so it does affect high school recruiting, because schools are having to cut their roster. With the addition of the portal, if they only have 15 scholarships to give and they're taking 10 kids out of the portal, that only leaves 5 scholarships for high school. And each college program differs each year in how many players they're going to take from high school versus the portal. So that is a factor. So this number here you see at 85 is not correct. Now they have 105. They can offer up to 105, but the number of positions on the team in football has been reduced. The good thing is that the number of scholarships in other sports like baseball, basketball, swimming, cross country, track, those numbers have increased. So there's a net loss in some ways, but there's a net gain other places. All right. I was a college coach for 8 years and a high school coach for 12 years. I deal with a lot of recruiting. We typically think of recruiting from our standpoint of what we're looking for, but you really need to understand what the colleges are looking for. College recruitment, they are flat out looking for players that can help them win. That's the bottom line. Can you help them win? Because if you help them win, you help coaches keep their jobs and make more money. The athletic program is the front porch of the school, and they are trying to win. So that's the biggest question. Can you help them win, and do you fit their culture? In football and as a recruiter, we talked a lot about tangibles. Tangibles are things you can measure and touch. The number one, the basic, is height, weight, speed. That is the most generic, but it's the most general thing that coaches are going to ask. The first thing they ask, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, they're going to ask, how tall is this person, how much they weigh, and how fast they are. The other tangible is the GPA. Core classes, SAT and ACT. In some ways, the SAT and ACT are being phased out. They're not the only criteria, but the GPA core is still there. In the recruiting process, coaches look beyond height, weight, and speed, but height, weight, and speed is the general first filter they use. After that, they go into what we call the critical factors. So if you're a football player, a basketball player, a track athlete, critical factors are athleticism, explosiveness, instinct, hand-eye coordination, playing speed, strength, and then, of course, limb length, shoulder girth, and those things like that. So as a coach, we're getting very critical about what people we think can fit in our program athletically. Other factors, which are major factors, your character. Your character matters, because if you don't fit character-wise, your work ethic is not there, or your moral compass is off, you won't fit their culture, and they will not risk their program, the good name of their program, or they won't risk wins or losses or any of those things for you. Do you have a competitive spirit? Are you considered tough? Are you durable? Your injury background comes into play in evaluation as well. If you've been injured, they will take an account. If you've had knee injuries, Achilles tear, shoulder surgeries, all those things will come into play. Football IQ or sports IQ matters. That is part of the evaluation process. Production. In the end, production it matters so much. Are you productive on the field? Do you make plays? Do you score touchdowns? Do you hit home runs? Do you make baskets? Even if you're tall or fast and have potential, but are you productive? And do you have work ethic? Intangibles, things like dependability, competitiveness, confidence, leadership, sociability, and the family background does matter. Where you come from, who your parents are, because they're not just evaluating you as an athlete, they're also evaluating your family. This sheet right here is just for demonstrative purposes. When coaches go out and evaluate athletes, they evaluate them by position. They have criteria that they are grading on. They have standards. Each school, each coach, each position has standards that they evaluate. This sheet right here actually comes from the University of Alabama. It was modified for East Tennessee State, but this basically sort of grades players, whether it's looking at a high school recruit. Is he an exceptional freshman? 1, is he a very good? He will be a starter as a sophomore. 3, will he be a starter as a junior? Is he an average of 4, a walk-on? And it's sort of it's opposite what we call the stars, because stars obviously 5 stars at most, but in some grading system they start with the lower number. You'll see here also a sheet from Alabama. If you're a football player, for Alabama back in the day, under Nick Saban, they were looking at their cornerbacks. They wanted their cornerbacks to be 5'10" to 6'1", 180 to 195, speed 4'3" to 4'6". The taller you are, the less athletic they require you to be. The shorter you are, the more athletic you would have to be. As you see here, this vertical jump, if you're 6'3", they might want your vertical jump to be 33 or 34. But if you're 5'8" or 9, your vertical jump will need to be close to 40. And then positional skills and things like that. Ken, I'm going to stop for a moment and see if there's any questions at this point.
There was also we have Miss Dorita now Dawkins on, a friend of mine who was able to add some value insight on it. In basketball, the basketball numbers for scholarship has not changed. She's at
basketball's not changed. Okay.
Yeah, she's one of the directors for one of the ADs over at Arkansas Razorbacks. So
okay, well, awesome. Yeah, those numbers are fluid, and like I said, basically with the scholarship numbers, football has gone up in scholarship, but some other sports, particularly the Olympic sports, have added numbers. Even though basketball is Olympic sports, that's not one of the ones we typically talk about as Olympic sports, but they have added numbers. All right, go ahead.
And here's a question. From a coach's perspective, did you see advantages with athletes that worked with an outside pay organization like NCAA to assist with recruiting?
All right, well, I'm going to get into this, but generally, I would say NCSA, that is not where FBS or Division I coaches are getting their athletes from. We are not getting our player list, prospect list from programs like that. Those services for $700 to $1,500, they will make you a really nice profile with your academics, your pictures, and put a highlight on there and all the pertinent information. And that's a really nice profile. They will even send it out to colleges, send it through the mail and email, but that's not how colleges, that's not how football programs, any football program that I know of, got their players. We bought prospect lists from services, and the services we could buy them from, you can't put yourself on there. So National Preps, we would buy their packet. Collegiate Data Sports, we buy theirs. The UC Report would buy theirs, and Exos. So we would buy those, and those are essentially programs that those companies go out and scout high school players. They evaluate tape, and then they sell their list to colleges. A program like Georgia or Alabama or Ohio State may have 3 or 4 services they use to collect data, but they don't typically use NCSA to do that. I can't speak for Division II or Division III programs, what they're doing, but the Power 5 programs are not doing that. And I understand the parents' desire to turn over every rock to make sure they're crossing every T and dotting every I, so their kid can have every opportunity, but that's not where they're getting it from. Generally, you still go through your high school coach. The high school coach will make the prospect sheets. If the high school coach will call and text college coaches, you as a parent can actually DM and text or email colleges and send things out and camps. But usually at the college level, our first look, we're getting a prospect sheet from a data source, but it's not NCSA. No offense to them. Even though you go to camp, they bought some time. They probably are a sponsor of somebody's camp, and they bought that time to be able to present to you. And if you got 800 campers and they are able to get 10 or 15 clients out of that 800, they'll earn their money back. And most people only go through this process one time, and they don't know. So I hope that answers your question. All right. Going through academics requirements, you got to have at the Division I level, you got to have at least a 2.3 core GPA to actually get a scholarship. Most kids don't know their core GPA. They know their overall when they add in PE and weights and things like that, and they may be over 3.0, but they don't count all those classes. At a certain point, you got to have your 4 years of English, 3 years of math, natural science, an additional English and social sciences. If you have a good guidance counselor in your school, I would recommend that parents, as you're entering, if your kid's in the 9th grade or going to the 9th grade, get with the guidance counselor. If they don't know how to do this, they can research it and figure out real quick and make sure your student is on track and taking the correct courses. Because you have to have a certain number by your junior year, because if you don't have a certain number, you can't make them all up your senior year, and you can't replace them all. So it's important to get off to a great start as a freshman in high school. All right. How do we find players? That's what I was going to go over. Recruiting services, names and film, national preps, collegiate sports data. Recruiting services provide names, and that's not NCSA. High school coaches send out the sheets. High school coaches call college coaches. College coaches call high school coaches and find out, hey, what you got this year. The other way that you can help is that you can attend college games and practices. Just like college coaches come to your games and your practices, if you can get the invite to go to a camp, you can help yourself. If you're a great player, sometimes it's not even your high school coach. It is another coach who will bring your name up. I've gone into coaches in a high school coach's office when I was a college coach and asked, hey, who's the best defensive lineman you played against? Who's the best player you played against? And sometimes that's the best recommendation when other schools in your region speak up on you and say, hey, this is a really good player over at Shiloh. This guy's a great player. That sometime will get a coach going on you. All right. Continuous improvement. It's a Japanese word called kaizen. It means continuous improvement. What you can do as a prospect to continuously or help yourself as a prospect beyond sending film, beyond calling a coach, the most important thing you can do is keep developing your ability, developing your athleticism, because that's what they're looking for. You can't control your height and weight necessarily, especially at your height, but you can keep adding to your athleticism. Run track, get a speed and agility coach, do plyometrics, lift explosively, and remain flexible. One of the worst things you can do is get stronger, but get inflexible and look stiff. No coach at any level, at any position, wants someone that's stiff and inflexible. So whether you're a wide receiver, a DN, a tackle, a cornerback, remain flexible. Same thing if you're a volleyball player, a basketball player, the ability to bend at the ankles, the knees, and the hips is really important. The ability to separate from the upper and lower body. Skill development, whether you have a skill trainer outside of your coaching or 7-on-7 in football, or get a personal trainer, a private skill trainer. I would never advocate you miss a team workout because those things get back. If you skip your team workout to train elsewhere, that will be a slight on your character. You don't want that out there. But I definitely would recommend getting specialized skill trainers. If you're a pitcher, if you're a hitter in baseball, you're jump shooting, whatever, there are ways to improve. I would also say one mark of great players is having a high sports IQ. Do film study, studying your playbook, and watching other great players. Things that sometimes we don't do is make sure we're getting the proper nutrition and recovery. Just like we work, we need to rest. There's times of the year that we need to take time off to allow our body to recover. We also need things like rollers and Normatex to help our body recover, proper sleep. One thing I did for my sons beyond normal recovery, we did cryo, we did ice baths, we did all those things. They all, at this point, they actually do acupuncture and all those things. But I got them a mental performance coach, a sports psychologist, because when you're talking about playing ball at a high level, if you're in a very competitive region or state, trying to go to college, the mental aspects and the mental health are very important. And, obviously we hear so many things these days about mental health. You can be proactive and helping your athlete learn things to be mentally strong and mental coping skills. The last part I would say is spiritual development. Many athletes, and myself included, their faith is a large part of how they overcome obstacles and stress in their life. All right, let's see. Boom. All right. Any questions about the last part we've been through about continuous improvement and the scouting, or any questions there between improvement and how do coaches find players? Any questions there?
I have a question about your sons. My name is Troy Taylor. I'm offensive line coach, defensive line coach at Fork Union Military Academy in Fork Union, Virginia. I have questions about your sons going to the sports psychologist. Like, what are the three things that they focused on? Like, what's three things that you would take away from what they gained from speaking to a sports psychologist and like a proactive
Yeah,
situation?
so basically I scoured the internet. I tried to find some people that, I tried to find some free ones. And I found a guy named John in California. And one of the things he talked about was identity, because as athletes, as performers, we are so often have our identity wrapped up in our vocation. And that's a good and a bad thing. You definitely have to put the time in to whatever your task is to be great at it. But when your identity is wrapped up in your vocation, and someday that vocation is going to end, well, who are you now? Or if your identity is wrapped up in your performance, meaning my worth and my value. So we talked about identity. You don't keep your identity wrapped up in what you do. That's what you do, not who you are, even though other people know you by what you do. But also the next thing would be your worth. So there's identity. The second part is worth. If a player is getting their worth from achieving in ball, what happens when they have a bad game? What happens when they have a bad season? What happens when they get cut? All those things. And we definitely do evaluate people by the value they bring and the vocation and job and all those kind of things. But as the athlete, you can't let your entire worth be based off your performance. So there's identity and there's worth. And then the last part, I would say, once they said, okay, this is my goal. I have a goal that, they talk about SMART goals and all things, something that's measurable and all that. But I would say, instead of focusing so much on the goal, it was on the process, the things they can control. So there's identity, worth, and then the process. Being more process oriented than goal oriented. Yes, you set a goal, but you create the process and you focus on the process in order to reach the goal. Hold on one moment.
I'm sorry. I need pass back your name.
I have to finish this.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. I'm at a high school and someone came in to clean. But either way, focusing on the process. So does that help you at all? Identity,
Yes, sir.
worth, and then the process. And I still talk with my sons sort of weekly about this. Is because there's so many things you can't control, and we do wrestle where we have these expectations, but yet we need to divorce ourselves from them, because if we don't meet them, it's very frustrating. And so Josh is in the NFL. I said, listen, you are in the NFL. A lot of people wish to be there. You're a starter. A lot of players would want to start. This year, he broke the Colts record for the most receptions in the first 2 seasons. And so I said, you need to be grateful for what you've done, yet you're not satisfied. At the same time, you're not entitled. And so it's a very tough place to be, where I know I belong in this league. At the same time, I'm not entitled, thinking I deserve to be in this league, or because it's you wrestle with those things, those conundrums of being entitled, but yet believing you belong, because you definitely have to have the confidence to believe that you should be there, but you got to be humble enough to work. And then you can't have your identity, even though you're working really hard at this thing that matters to you. You can't have your whole identity. You can't have your whole worth wrapped up in it. And you can't be solely committed to the outcome, but more to the process, because you can control the process. And that's your routines you do, the mental things you go through, whether it's assignment, alignment, whether it's recovery, your practice time, your film study. You can control those things. And then little things about what you're thinking or saying to yourself during the day or during the game, how you view yourself, those kind of things. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Yep. Next thing I want to hit is want to hit marketing. All right. The first kind of marketing that an athlete does is how they present themselves and how they carry themselves, regardless of what you're putting on social media, but the people around you, how you're carrying yourself and how you're presenting yourself. But when in regards to highlights, I know you've seen all these things, but keeping your highlights 3 to 5 minutes, up to date, personal contact info where your cell phone is on there, your Twitter with a handle that is sort of close to your name, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, making sure those things are up to date, because I've been on kids' huddle highlights and the Instagram doesn't work, or the Twitter is not up to date, or he's got a Twitter name that's Pookie M. Jackson, and I don't know who he is and I don't know where he plays. So making sure those things are up to date. And when it comes to highlights, put your most explosive plays first. I mean, whether you're breaking away, slam dunking, you're dropping a 3 in somebody's face, or you got this run, you broke 7, 8 tackles and you ran for 60, your most explosive plays. And if you got explosive plays for 10 minutes, put them all on there. But if you don't put mediocre plays on there. They're not going to see mediocre. So the highlight thing, and then of course, marketing yourself. You send film and coaches through via social media, email. You can be proactive. You can take agency and you can send out tape yourself. Parents, you can do a lot of this. At some point, though, you got to let your kids speak for themselves. So if you've been talking to a coach, texting, or if you got control of your kid's Twitter or handle, you got to get your kid trained up to do some of it too, so that when your kid gets in this coach's face, the kid can talk. I mean, you want to talk for your kids some, but the kids got to speak up at some point in time, because that's who's going to be playing ball there. Attending college camps or juniors days, you got to find a way to get yourself so those coaches can see you on the hoof. The question we always ask, have you seen this kid? Because tape, even though we say it doesn't lie, we can't tell the competition always from tape. We can't see how tall, how long, how thick a guy is on tape. We can't see all those things. We can't see the plays sometimes that he's not involved in on tape. So it's important to get face-to-face so they can put a face with a name, get a measure. Hey, I stood next to this kid and I interacted. I can feel this kid's aura. I can see the energy. I got eye contact with him. That matters, because you're rarely going to get a scholarship without them seeing you face to face. Your attitude, I got that in light blue. It's you got to be light and airy, but you got to be really competitive. And sort of some people say you got to be outgoing. If you're an introvert, when you go to camps, you got to almost become an extrovert. You got to be outgoing, and then you got to let your play speak for itself. But sometimes kids that are quiet and reserved, unless their play is just off the charts, coaches will think, well, the kid is standoffish. He's not really excited. When you go to camp, the other thing is there's lots of kids there. You want to dress bright. Gold, yellow, orange, green. If you can have some socks with your name on it, with your class 2026, 2027 on the socks, something where, or the back of your jersey where they can identify you, a green headband. So that way when I'm coaching and I see a kid ball out and I grab one of my buddies, hey, the kid over there with the red headband on, the kid over there with the gold shoes, the kid over there with the orange shorts, something that someone else is wearing that identifies you, that's easy to find out. Now, you had to do something for me to notice you, but it's got to be easy to find you. One thing I heard about one kid that he bring business cards, 4x6s to camp. So when he ball out, he hand the cards. Now, if you haven't done nothing at the camp, they're going to throw it away. But if you have, then they go, hey, that's that kid right there. This is his information. Parents, as we talked about in CSA, you can hire a recruiting specialist, but this recruiting specialist needs to do more than just make a profile. They need to be able to advise you, because sometimes it comes down to, hey, I got 3 visits this weekend. I can only go to 1. There's 4 weekends in the spring, and I got 12 schools that want me to come for a spring game and spring. I can't go to all. Which is the best opportunity? And so the person that can advise you and connect with college coaches, they got somebody's phone number. They got somebody's text. They can get on there and say, hey, John is coming this weekend. Or can you look at this tape real quick? The education part is probably the easiest thing because you can pretty much pull a lot of stuff off these days. So I wouldn't be paying anybody just to educate. They need to be advising you, and they need to be connecting you as well. Any questions about that marketing yourself side? No question. All right, cool. This sheet right here, this comes from a good friend of mine named J.R. Sandlin. If you go on Twitter, if you're a football athlete, if you go on Twitter and put out J.R. Sandlin, he is the general manager at SMU now. He came from Oklahoma. Before that, he was at Jacksonville State. He had been at Alabama. If you look at this slide right here, he's basically giving you what to put down on your highlight tape if you're a cornerback, if you're a linebacker, if you're a defensive end, defensive line. So just look up J.R. Sandlin on Twitter, and you can go to he's got it set up for offense, defense. He loves to do it. He's, like I said, he was a recruiting coordinator, personnel guy. He basically knows how to evaluate. Any question about making highlight tapes, anything like that from anybody? All right, cool. All right. When you're being recruited, everybody talks about dead period, quiet period, but dead periods are periods of time when you can't go on campuses. There's no in-person interaction. You can't go to their campus. They can't come to your school. But as I said, as often as you can, get to relevant schools. Get to schools that are recruiting you. If you are an FCS kid, don't spend all your time at the University of Virginia. Don't spend all your time at the University of North Carolina if you're a D2 kid. If you want to go there and have that experience one time, do that. But don't spend all your time. If you are a D3 kid, unless you just want experience, don't go to Alabama for camp and then wonder why on signing day the D2 kid is just like you. He signs with the D2 because he's been interacting with them. So as often as you can, get to schools that are on your level. If you ball out, the other schools will come calling too. But don't spend our time at a school that's not going to recruit you. A lot of kids spend our time at the big name school. In the end, they end up being FCS, D2 kids, and they don't have relationships at that level, or even at HBCU, because they spent all their time chasing after Nebraska, spent all their time chasing after Oklahoma or Miami. So get an honest evaluation of where you are, because you can go to those schools, and if you ball out at Johnson C. Smith, guess what? You ball out, you all conference, all American at that level, the next level up will come get you. I've had a number of players that went FCS. They've gone Power 5. One went to South Carolina. He plays for the Denver Broncos. We had another one transfer from East Tennessee State. and ended up going to LSU. One transfer of East Tennessee State was All-American. He went to Memphis, and he's also All-American there. So nowadays, you can get it any level, and if you ball out, you can go to the next level up. Let's see. All right, parents, this is a little bit for you. A parent, encourage your child to be excellent in every area. Parents, I know parents, you want to help your kid get an advantage, but sometimes parents, we do too much. Parents, our main job is to provide perspective, to be supportive, to stay positive in this recruiting process. Encourage your player to be a great teammate. Encourage your player, your athlete, to be a good student. Encourage them to be a good person of character, because the buts cost more athletes than anything. The butt in character and the butt, well, he's a good player, but he's not a good student. But he's got this character issue. He's got this arrest record. So encouraging your athlete, your student athletes, to be a good student, a good person, and a good teammate will go a long way. And then encouraging them to persevere and not quit. It's going to be some struggles in sports. It's going to be struggles in life, a lot of tribulation. So encouraging them to persevere, not to quit, and don't complain. If you, as a parent, are complaining about the coaching and complaining about other players, your kid is listening. He's also or she's also going to be a complainer. You want to be an asset. If your situation is that bad, if the school is that bad, at the end of the season, you ain't got to tell nobody. Go to another school. Do what's best for your child, but unless they're doing something morally wrong, try not to be a complaint, but be an asset and not a liability.
Got a question.
Go ahead.
I actually just wanted to underscore what you just said, Gary, and add to that. Please don't call the athletic director. If your son or daughter hasn't talked to their coach, don't call the athletic director to complain, report, whatever. Like, help them learn to work through the process, work through the chain of command. I get those a lot. They don't help.
No, because that word get out there.
Help your student.
Mm-hmm.
The word to get out there that Mr. or so-and-so and Mrs. So-and-so is a lot to handle and a lot to manage. And even if your kid is really talented, they will avoid them. And the high school coach will tell the college coaches, and he may not say it directly, but they'll ask the question, and they won't. The quietness says a lot when they say, "Oh, how's the kid's character?" And just being quiet, or his mama, she doing too much. Some coaches, you know what? They don't have time for it. And when you get on the college level, unless they're doing something morally wrong to your kid or dealing with a surgery, you can't talk to coach about playing time too much. You're not going to have the ability to go in there and argue about how we use you. You have to be a real special player to get in there and talk about scheme and development. They just don't do that. They, just like they don't come on your job and question how you doing things, they're not going to stand for you to come in there and talk to them about how you play my son. If it's that bad, it'd be time to go. So you can start it off by being in high school to operate in a correct way, allow your kid to go through the channels, to speak to his coach, and let that handle. If it's that bad and your kid talk to the coach, you talk to the coach, and you have to go take to the AD, you're probably at the point where you need to go somewhere. So that's my question on that. All right, let's see. All right. Best fit, committable offers. I have parents come time and say, hey, kid had 10 offers. Now I had a kid that a couple years ago here in Georgia had a bunch of offers, came down to commitment time. None of them were committable. He ended up committing and finding a home for him. But generally, I'll talk about scheme and technique fit. You need to be able to evaluate what schemes fit your kid well. Now, obviously, college coaches, they change jobs. But if you go into the situation where the scheme doesn't fit you, that's a tough one. Or if let's say you're a zone corner, you don't have long speed, and all of a sudden you get in a situation where they're playing a bunch of man-to-man, or you're a cover two corner and they're playing, it don't fit you. So understanding what schemes they run, what techniques the coach uses, and when you go in there and go to a camp, you go to a junior day, make sure you're asking these questions. Make sure you take a notepad. It also sets you differently. When you bring a notepad, you look different than most players because you're taking notes. Scheme, technique fit, you need to be concerned. How good is the development here? Who have they development? What's the track record of development? What's the culture like in the locker room? Is this a culture where everybody's getting cussed out? Is it a low standard culture? Everybody's coming late. What is the culture like? Is it supportive? Also, opportunity, playing time, opportunity. Are they bringing everybody in from JUCO? Are they bringing everybody in for transfers? Because the worst thing you want to hear is we're full. Sometimes coaches just lie and say they're full. They just don't want you. But reality, with 105 roster spots, 85 scholarships to 105, sometimes people are full. And if you wait too long, waiting for whatever school, people get full. Now, you're a 5-star, they'll probably wait for you. But if you're a 3-star or you're a 2-star, you just getting in, sometimes you can't wait. You got to take it, because when they get full, they're full. And as you wait longer and longer during the football season, when it gets time for that portal to open, they're going to move on from high school kids altogether. Also, choosing a school that there's someone at the school on the staff that's an advocate for you, a mentor, somebody that you know. As a parent, you turn your kid over to that school. If you have an outside relationship with a coach there, sometimes that coach, that trainer, somebody can put a bug in your kid's ear or in your ear to let you know how things are going. So it's important when you're choosing a school, finding, yes, the scheme and fit, development, culture, opportunity, but somebody there that can advocate, even a professor on campus that can be a source of advice for your kid. Then you look at costs. If you're not talking about scholarships, you could be looking at, how much am I going to come out of my pocket? How much aid do they offer? How much does it cost to go there? So the cost is a factor, and the logistics. If you're talking about going to ball games and the place you're going is 8 hours away, you're talking about a plane flight, you're talking about hotels. All those come into play. Sometimes logistics are a huge thing in the cost and time. You got to leave, get off work on Friday to get there in time. Or they play on a Tuesday night, I can't get there. How many times a year will you get to see your kid play? All right. At this point, I want to move on from recruiting and talk a little bit about NIL and collectives and stuff like that. Any questions about recruiting before I move on? All right. The hottest topic in sports right now, in college sports, name, image, and likeness. Basically, the basis of it is that the college athletes have the right, and high school have, in some states, have the right to monetize their name, their image, and their likeness through product endorsements and other activities. It could be signing autographs, could be going to a car dealership, it could be getting on social media and drinking an energy drink. It could be just basically showing yourself with a T-shirt. I remember in high school, my son Caleb had a deal with Spray Ground. He would wear Spray Ground bags, and basically he would post on Instagram and Twitter, and Spray Ground would send him book bags. He had like 25 of them in high school, and he did that himself. He reached out to them, and basically they said, okay, we'll do this with this kid. He also had to deal with Phenom in high school. He would wear Phenom, he would post their things, and they would send him free gear. Right now, he has a deal with Next Trend or Next Round. He wears their stuff. They pay him in gear, but they also pay him monetarily through that. So it's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. But there's the name, image, and likeness of the true NIL is not the biggest part of what's going on in college football. Very few players have true NIL. My son Josh had NIL. Caleb has NIL. They sign card deals. They sign apparel deals, drink deals. Those are true NIL. But what most people talk about is the collectives. So you have NIL, and collectives are part of NIL, but they're different because collectives are a group of individuals, boosters, and business persons from one school that essentially have raised money or pulled together marketing opportunities to benefit athletes from their school. And you see the 1870 and foundations are from Ohio State University, and Spry, I think I want to say from Texas A&M. Miami has a huge one, Nebraska. Most every Division I, Power 5, Power 4 school has one. Some FCS programs do not have them. Some G5 schools have them, but they don't have as much money in that sphere. As we get going here, can't have anybody stop anytime because I could just go on for days about things that have gone in this sphere. All right. Any questions thus far?
I have a question. It just made me think about this. Like your sons and these kids that are high profile NIL guys, do they have a business license? Because like, I guess like the taxes and everything on some of that money, like what's the
All
way to
right.
go about that? Not that my son would, or I have a player, but just,
All right. Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead. I'm gonna go back to it. Also, okay, this is Athlete Incorporated or Athlete LLC. For both of my sons, I created LLCs for them before they went to college. So Josh had one. I created one during his freshman year. His NIL dropped his sophomore year. So basically, I went to a law firm for about $800. You can have an LLC created. Then I got a tax ID number, an EIN. I opened them a bank account. At that point, after opening them a business bank account, the next thing you really should do is get you a CPA, because most of these NIL opportunities and with the collectives, they do not take taxes out of it. So you're getting your money through 1099. So if the deal is worth $10,000, they're not taking Social Security, state, and federal out of there. They're just sending you 10 grand. And they send you 10 grand, then all of a sudden, next April, you're going to owe some portion of that. I say Uncle Sam's going to get his quarter out of your, he wants his quarter out of every dollar. You basically need a CPA to help you keep track of, you got 10 grand in your account. And so for what we had his base business account, then we had his personal checking, and then we had a savings. So we try to move that quarter, 25% of every dollar that comes in there, try to move it into that savings. If you have a CPA, they can pay estimated taxes during the year off your deals to make sure you're covering yourself. You don't have to have a financial advisor, but sometimes a financial advisor is a good thing if you're getting large sums of money, because at that point, the financial advisor will have deals already set up with CPAs where they're getting your taxes taken care of. You can even become an employee. So let's say if you have a kid that's a 5-star and they're bringing a lot of money, 1099, parents, you could actually become an employee of your child's company. And as an employee, they can pay you a salary because the tax system is set up for business. So let's imagine some kid getting $500,000. He can sign, mom and dad can work get a $50,000 from the kid, because if he doesn't pay any salaries, he's end up going to have to pay all that money in taxes. So essentially the salary is an expense of the business, but expense is going to you as a parent or someone else as an advisor. So I had LLC created, tax IDs, open a business account, and you see a CPA, that should be my next step. But what we end up getting was a marketing rep. So the marketing rep was someone to help them find deals for them. So we had all of those things in place.
what percentage of the marketing rep? What percentage did they ask?
Okay. All right. Let me go right down.
And then when the check is made out, is it made out to the personal kid's name, or is it made out to the LLC?
Okay. All right. So marketing reps charge between 5 and 20%. So every time you do an NIL deal from an individual, you doing it with some car wash down the street. Hold on one second. I gotta text this kid back. It's one of my kids that was at East Tennessee State that he transferred, and he's calling me for advice. All right. And so when you do an NIL deal, they're not taking taxes out of it, but you have to tell whoever's doing the deal, whether it's with a collective or whether it's with an entity, a drink, an apparel line. I want the deal made out. I'm the lender. They'll end up calling you the lender or the influencer. I want it made out to. So Josh has an LLC. It's Josh Downs LLC. Caleb has one. His is C Downs 02 LLC. So the deal is made out to them, but then after that, it will say acting in the name of Caleb Downs, or henceforth Caleb Downs or Josh Downs. So the deal is written out to the LLC. The check is written out to the LLC. It needs to go into the LLC or to that bank account for the LLC. I think there were a few deals that were made out in their individual name, but most go into the LLC. Most LLC people, that marketing reps, they take 5, 10, 15%. Most of them don't sign exclusive deals, but we sign a deal with Excel Marketing. They do the marketing for like Peyton Manning and Derek Jeter and Tiger Woods. Those are exclusive deals, meaning that if I sign a deal with Excel wants to do all my marketing. I can't do deals with other people. Now, if I find my own deal, Excel will redline it. They'll look at the contract. They won't take a percentage. The next thing that happens is collective money. Collective money, I look at it like Social Security almost. If I told you I want to negotiate your grandmother's Social Security and take 10%, you'd be like, Coach Downs, you're crazy. You can't take 10% of my grandmother's Social Security. You're not negotiating anything. A lot of vendors, a lot of marketers want to negotiate. They want to be your marketing rep because they want to take 10, 15, 20% of your collective money. If you're a 4-star going to Georgia and Georgia's going to give you $250,000 a year, well, they want to be your negotiator because they want to get 10% of that. They want to get $25,000 a year off of you for doing little or nothing. Now, when dealing with the collectives, there are some other things in these deals other than money. A lot of things that could be negotiated. And this is like parents. If you've not done a lot of business, it can be scary going in here sitting in. These coaches are negotiating 50 to 100 contracts a year, and especially you're dealing with whoever runs their collective, and you're just doing one. Sometimes it's not just how much money. Sometimes there's housing involved. Sometimes there's cars involved. Sometimes there's travel involved. And then there's, when do your kid get your money? When he signs this agreement with the collective or with this endorsement, when does he get it? How does he get it? And what does he have to do to get it? Things that happens is like, hey, you know what? You got to do one post a week. One post in your story, one post in your Instagram, one in Twitter, and then we want our name to stay in your bio for a whole year. I mean, so you got to talk through some of these negotiation things when dealing with the NIL. Let me go back, and if you have another question about that marketing, did that answer your question as far as the
Yes,
LLC?
sir.
Okay.
And we have a question jumping back a little bit, Gary. What is the best strategy for keeping in contact with coaches while the athlete is still trying to figure out the best fit? Not trying to string coaches along, but how do you keep those options open?
And you do have to string them along. You have to, because they're doing it to you. Your kid might be, they might have 10 DBs on that board. Your kid might be number 3. They are going to hold on to your kid, but they try to get number 1, number 2. When number 1 and number 2 commit to someone else, then they call you. And even sometimes they might call somebody else and slide them in your way. So you do have to keep communicating while you're trying to make that decision. Let's say Sacramento State really wants your kid. You got that in the hand, but you're waiting on San Jose State. You're working on San Jose State, but you want that. You literally have to string them along, and you can do it through text or you can do it through phone calls. And it needs to be at least once a week to keep the communication lines open. They understand. They're doing the same thing to you. They're literally stringing you along as well. Now, if they really, really want you, sometimes they'll wait. But you do have to string 2 or 3 offers along while you're waiting for the one you want, or you're just trying to make a decision. You don't know. You have to keep both of these options going, and then you need to stay in touch because you need to find out what's going on over there. Because if you don't talk to them, you might not know that, you know what, he sounded a little bit different tonight. His tone was different because he might have committed a kid, and now he doesn't know. They said they were going to take 2 DBs, but they just decided to only take 1. They said they were taking 2 high schoolers, and now they decided some kid came available in the portal. Now they're not taking anybody. So you do have to stay in contact, and you can't feel bad about it. There's a way to handle it where you're not being rude, but you're definitely going to have to be a poker player with it and handle your business. You got to keep stringing along. And then once you make a decision, you don't want to burn the bridge. You just let the coach know, hey, coach, so-and-so, we decided to go with so-and-so. And hopefully they say, oh, we're happy for you. And they move on and you move on, and maybe you cross bridges later. But you do have to string programs along. And we also understand if you're at let's say you've got an offer from an SCS school and you've committed there. And then all of a sudden the Power 5 school or the G5 school you've been waiting on your whole life calls, those coaches understand. Now, I always say go where you want it, but at the same time, they understand if San Jose State's recruiting somebody and all of a sudden the kid gets an offer from USC, guess what? They know they lost him. If Virginia Union's recruiting them and the kid gets an offer from Virginia Tech, they know they're losing them. That's just what it is. So don't feel bad about it. Be respectful about it. It's business because that's really what it is. All right, let's see. Within the name, image, and likeness and making deals, let's say with the collective, when you sign with a collective from a university, they have licensing agreements. So if you sign with Virginia Tech, you sign with their collective, and let's say you're going to get $50,000 a year, they have some license agreements there that you are automatically agreeing to sign a certain number of cards for Topps, or Fanatics is going to sell your jersey. You're getting part of your money, but part of your money is coming from that jersey sale from Fanatics or from those card sales. So sometimes, and those agreements might trump any outside agreements. It could be that you can't sign with anybody else card wise because of that. It could be you can't sell your own jersey somewhere else because of that. So there's a lot of things you got to ask with these collectives that most time we're not used to asking them. All right. Any questions about collectives and collective deals with the collectives?
Is there like a pay scale? Like I heard one of these teams that's in the Final Four, it's like, a year one quarterback gets this, a year two quarterback gets that. Or is that true or is it not?
Every school is different, but there's definitely. So I had a couple kids that they asked for my help, and what I did was I called a couple marketing reps and I called some different guys out on the street to find out what the market was. And let's say, this school right here, all the freshmen that come in are getting $50,000. This school right here, they're paying for a 4-star. They're doing $250,000. So there is markets out there, but it's not solid. So you basically have to figure out, okay, University of Georgia is doing this for O linemen and D linemen and quarterbacks, but for running backs, they're doing this. And this year, when Georgia didn't do well at the receiver position, they came up. They're doing more. And the marketing reps and the financial advisors are the ones that know. Because think about it. Marketing reps may have players at multiple schools, and financial advisors may have players at multiple schools. So they'll know what these schools are doing. And if you're one of their clients, they will sort of let you know what the market's like. They won't reveal exactly what their guys are getting, but they can let you know what certain schools are doing. Like, you know what? Miami's doing a lot this year, or Texas A&M's doing a lot this year at this position, or someone else shop is closed. I remember a couple years ago, Ohio State came out and Coach Day said that they thought they was going to spend a certain amount of money to keep the team together, and the public went crazy, and they're still. But then they found out right now that it's like 10 schools spending that much or more, and they just didn't say anything, but they're spending that much money. All right, so it's out there, but you basically have to do some recon, get with a financial advisor that manages some players, a marketing rep, and they'll know what certain schools are doing, and in the market, and that way you can figure out. You know what? I really want to go to this school. They're doing less in this school, but they're not sliding me. It's just they're doing less. And it's okay, because I never tell somebody just go in for money. At the same time, you want to know what the market is out there. One of the worst things you could do is, let's say you're a defensive end and you're a 4-star kid and you got great parents and great character, and you go to University of Virginia and you're starting as a freshman, and they did not bring up NIL. They didn't bring it up at all. They just gave you a scholarship, your cost of attendance, and they didn't bring it up. And then you find out the guy opposite you, he's not even playing, and he's getting $200,000, and he got a car, and his family got an apartment. And I'm not for being jealous of people or coveting, but you're like, wait a minute, it's not fair at this point. And so like, that's what the market is. So you have to find out what's there. You don't want to be nitpicky, but you do want to find out what's available and what's available to you and what they're doing. But if you don't bring it up, sometimes these schools won't bring it up. You have to find a way to broach the conversation. Keep the main thing. Talk about ball, academics, culture, but you got to find a way to broach the conversation. And sometimes the way to do it is you hire one of these marketing specialists and you say, look, we'll give you 10%. And it's like, dang, I'm giving away 10%, but they'll cover you. If you're a big enough name prospect, you probably can find a marketing rep to do it for free, because the marketing rep will likely work for an agent, and the agent will want your pro contract potential. So then they'll do the college NIL stuff for no cost. But they can make more money in college now. So some say, we're going to take at least 5. To me, it's probably worth it to get somebody that's used to the language and used to that and does that business to advocate for you, to go through the fine print of those collective and NIL contracts. And a good marketing rep can find you. He'll earn his money back. So what you give him in commission, they'll earn that money back in the deals they find you.
Gary, can you sign multiple collectives, say one under one university and one private?
So like if you look at this slide right here, some schools have no issue, but at Ohio State, this foundation, they don't necessarily want you to sign with 1870 because they're actually competing entities. So they're basically both competing for donors' dollars. So you might sign with 1870 and say, well, we don't want you to do a deal with foundation. It'd be great if one entity might find your car and the other entity might find you housing or something and multiple deals, but they are competing for revenue and each of them wants to be the official, unofficial collective of the university. It's just what it is. But if you do sign an agreement with the foundation or collective, they can have in there that this is an exclusive. You cannot sign with another collective. Now you could sign with another outside marketing person, but you can't sign with another collective that feeds into the school. Likewise, if you sign a marketing deal, the marketing rep may say, hey, when you sign with us, you're exclusively with us. So when you're going pro, the agent you sign with may want you to sign an exclusive marketing agreement because that's how he recoups a lot of the money he spends on you going through the combine and training. He don't want you to sign with another marketing group. But most NIL players sign with multiple marketing clients. The problem with signing with multiple marketing groups is they step on each other's toes. So let's say you're trying to get a card deal and you're working with one marketing rep. He calls a card company. Next day, other rep calls him. They're like, who are you working with? One rep calls Adidas trying to get a shoe deal. Next day, the other rep calls Adidas. So that's the problem with working with multiple reps. You may lose out on some local deals by having only one marketing rep, and you may find it better to have a local rep and a national rep. And you tell the national rep, hey, don't do anything here in Raleigh. My so-and-so is working in that area. Or don't do anything in the card space. Focus on cars, or focus on apparel. That way they don't step on each other's toes. All right.
I have some questions about these collectives.
Yes.
Are the collectives nonprofits?
Some of them are.
Do the boosters?
Some of them are nonprofit, and they'll have a focused area where there's kids or whether it's homelessness or whether it's cancer research, and they're set up as nonprofits, and the players are receiving compensation for deliverables, for signing autographs, or for promotion. But if you know anything about regular nonprofits, if they're a charity, then smaller percent, like they have to give out certain amounts of money. But if they're a foundation, foundations don't have to give out very much a year. And foundation can actually give more to their employees. So really, a lot of them are set up as nonprofits, but they're not operating outside of the normal rules of nonprofits. You just have to look at the tax code to see what the rules are surrounding nonprofits. A lot of nonprofits don't give out any money, don't give out any aid to anybody. It's just like very minimal. Like a normal foundation is like 5%. A normal charity, they got to take 70% of their money from outside resources. And then when they receive that, they only have to give a certain percentage out to the public. But a charity can't give but so much money to administrative fees. But you got to think that a NIL deal is not an employee. So a charity can't give out 50% of their revenue to employees. But athletes are not employees; they're 1099. So essentially, you are outside. It's like hiring a plumber. It's like hiring a plumber.
Is a nonprofit.
Yeah. So, but yeah, a lot of them are set up as nonprofits.
So what's the benefit of Ohio State having multiple collectives? Is it because these boosters want to have influence and they want to have say and like they want to be separate entities? And like, I don't know, how do they please them all? Because I mean, it seems like it would be, too many money people wanting to get their way.
It is.
I don't. In Ohio State, I wouldn't say that those boosters have any influence on who plays and things like that. But I think it's more like think of it like this: if you wanted to buy an NFL team, you would have to cost you $5 billion, right? Cost you more than that, even, right? But someone could join the collective or foundation or something and feel like they have a vested interest and influence for a
Yeah.
lot less money. And that's where some of them just want to help players. Ohio State has several guys that are former players that basically are part of their foundations that are literally advocating for players. And it would seem like, yeah, they are competing against each other, but it just depends on the market. Some cities are large enough with a lot of corporations, and more people want to be involved. And sometimes you can't get in with, I don't know what the foundation, I don't know what they require to get in them, but the 1870 is a smaller outfit, let's say, but they still have some opportunities that I realize that some
Oh,
players that might not be the bigger name players might not sign agreements with the foundation. They might sign agreements with the 1870. And the thing about it, you want to say this guy is part of he's under contract with us.
yeah, I'm gonna buy him. I'm gonna buy
Pretty
Caleb
much.
Downs. I'm at Virginia
Yeah,
Tech, and I want Caleb Downs. I'm gonna give $5 million. And
yeah. Well,
if
it's
you
not
don't
just
get Caleb
that
Downs,
because
you gave $5 million. You're gonna be upset. I mean,
well, they're
it's a
not going to
mess.
give them money. Like the collectors are set up to benefit the players, but they do. I don't know how it was years and years ago. You know how boosters couldn't have relationships with players. Now through the collectives, boosters can have events. They can have tailgates after games. They can have balls. They can have fundraiser, and players
Yeah.
can interact. And you know how people want to take pictures with certain people. Sometimes that's really what it is. They want
Yes.
screen time. That I know this guy. I got my arm around his shoulder. Some relationships are way beyond that. Some of these guys become like mentors, like they're in
Oh
business
yeah.
and they want to actually, if you want to go in business, we'll help you. We're not just giving you money, but we'll literally mentor you in getting
Oh
in
yeah.
business and sort of mentee you. So some
Yeah.
of the relationships is some of them, yes, there are definitely some ego-driven situations out there.
Ohio State has two.
That I know of.
In
Two that I know
1870
of.
seems like that's the one that is for like your Joe Schmo fan. I give $100 a year. I give 500. Then they probably have another one that's like the comma guys, the guys that's giving, zero dot
I
comma.
think that
It's like they're big money people.
Coach Meyer was part of 1870. Yeah, I mean it's their societies. They're literally some of them are more black tie, lobster and steak type dinner, and the other ones are burgers and fries, a little bit less. But relationships are relationships, and I've interacted with both of them, both groups, and they both seem like really good people, but they are different. It's sort of like when I was coaching. Sometimes you run into a staff that's more like a beer staff, and another staff is more like wine. So, like more bourbon, man. Everybody on this staff here, they smoke cigars and bourbon. This staff here, they definitely smoke, they drink Bud Light. So,
Okay.
and some of the collectors are like that.
How do the
More mom and
coaches
pop.
know the market value? Are they in with the agents or the marketing people? How do the coaches know the
I think
market?
some programs, if you're a top program, you can try to set your own market and tell players what you're going to do. Like there was a thing where Georgia and Bama used to call it the Nick Saban discount or the Kirby discount. If you come here, you get developed and you win a national championship, you go to the NFL. So we can
Yeah.
pay you less. Now with sort of parity, now the market is out there. And some programs are like, we're not going to do with that. I don't care what they're doing. I've heard some ridiculous numbers this cycle that some programs are going to go and they're going to offer something outlandish to get a game changer. That doesn't really change the whole market. I heard something the other day with that receiver from Texas Tech. Some people try to say that he changed the market. I don't believe he changed the market because some of the things that came out, that program's willing to do that. They're going to do it. But most of the, you're not going to find out what they did. They're not going to put out there.
They're trying to keep him. They're trying to keep him. That's why they.
Yes.
So they're basically
matching.
trying to keep him from Alabama and Ohio State or whoever's got more money.
Correct. So there is sometimes players will embellish their numbers because you think the coaches aren't saying it, put numbers out there. The collectives aren't putting numbers out there. So sometimes you have players that are embellishing about what they got number-wise. So you do have that going on.
Can these things be FERPA'd? I mean, can they do like a Federal Information Act and find out really who's – no?
No. I think with the 1090 with the foundation, because it's charitable, you can find out who gave money into the charitable, but you can't necessarily go and solicit, say, hey, I want to see the contracts. I want to see what contracts you signed, what you gave in compensation. And so what's going on right now is with the new agreements, they said that any deals that over $5,000 outside of the athletic department would have to be given to like a third party or open doors. But most of the collectives are finding ways to, like, they'll bring those collectives in-house or they'll give the deal. So let's say I had a deal that was outside of the athletic department, but I don't want the public to know the deal. So what I would end up doing is I'll turn the deal over to somebody inside the athletic department. So that way it doesn't have to be disclosed to the public of what that deal is, whether it's a car, whether it's housing, whether it's food, whether it's travel. Hey, you got 10 flights on a Learjet, like something crazy like that, So there's ways around it. And I when I was in the NFL, I hated that the NFL released player salaries. And I know the general public wants to know. And I know when I was playing years ago, older players, they got cheated because nobody knew what other players made they had no free agency. So this is not that situation. It's not that anybody's saying, well, you know what, we want to make sure the all-conference running back in Nebraska is getting compensated equally to the all-conference running back that's at the Big Ten. I don't think that's most people's concern. So I don't believe that the Congress is going to say, hey, we're going to give the public this because it's not protecting the athlete. Athletes are not getting taken advantage of in the sense that, man, you are all conference or all American and you're getting 10 grand a month. That kid in the same conference was all conference and his school gave him $1 million. That's not the fear. And if, that's not the fear. So I don't think Congress is going to do anything to force those numbers to come out.
Additionally, Mr. Taylor, FOIA isn't applicable to private entities. So as a student athlete at the University of Arkansas, or an employee at the University of Arkansas, there are things that are FOIAble that you can't get from Vanderbilt because they're a private institution and they're not subject to some of those things.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the fact that we're 1099 is no different. I can't hire a plumber and tell him he can't go work for anybody else. I can't say, hey, you can't sign an agreement, or plumbers can only get paid $200 an hour. You can't, because he's 1099. He doesn't work for me. And there's no union for the college players. So some of that stuff can't be regulated because they're not employees. If you want to make employees.
Is there a contract? I mean, is there a contract signed that if this kid doesn't do this, he don't get paid? Or if he leaves, he ain't getting the money?
Yes. Contracts is things like not just the deliverables, like social media posts and showing up to events, but also if he gets arrested, a felony, acts in a way that, or quits or leave. Like, I'll give you an example. I knew a kid that had a car. School was paying, he was getting car payments as part of his deal. And you transfer, they stop. Like, it all stops. You leave the school, you go somewhere else, it stops.
It stops.
And then there's some things that people would put in the contract. Let's say a kid is getting $100,000 for a year. And they say, well, look, we're going to give you $5,000 a month. Well, you say $5,000 a month for 12 months does not add up to $100,000. Is it right? That means that you're going to get your last check for $40,000, but you're not going to get it until January 20th or February 1st. That way you stay through the bowl game, that kind of stuff. So the collectives can push money and structure it so that a player, if he leaves early, he won't get things, or if he behaves in a certain way, he can't get it. Now, it can't be
multi-year? Are they multi-year or are they just single year?
Some are and some are not, because what happens is some players sign multi-year deals, and at the end of the year, if the player underperforms, the collective comes back and the coaches say, hey, we're going to lower this down. Or if the player overperforms, they're going to renegotiate. So even if it's a multi-year deal, it's almost like scholarships. They're one-year renewables. They'll redo it at the end of the year.
Bill Belichick is the ultimate salary cap guy. And it's like he buys the team for 1 year and he's got $30 million. Like, how's he going to change the game? And like being old like he is, it's almost like he's not building a program. He's just going to buy a team, every year. So like, how's he going to change the game?
He's going to use the portal. And I think because he hired Mike Lombardi, they're going to have better knowledge of managing. A lot of the colleges, they deal, the collectives were outside. And now I think there's two pots they're playing with. They're playing with the collective money, but they're also playing with the revenue sharing right here. And so the question is, if a kid signs with Michigan, is he getting 50,000 from the collective and he's getting 10,000 from the revenue sharing? And that's not what's happening. So basically, that 20 million that may come into Michigan and the collective money, it's all their pot. And the player, it doesn't matter if he's getting all of it from one location, he's signing one deal. And Bill Belichick will know how to manage it per year. He won't go in debt over it. He won't overextend himself. He'll do a good job of that. The question is, just like Bama and Georgia, will a player say, hey, I want to go to North Carolina because of development, and I may take less at North Carolina than I take somewhere else because I'm getting the development and getting pro eyes on me and getting that evaluation, because that is essentially going to be more long-term. But there's some positions where you got quarterbacks that are making $1 million, $2 million, $3 million that they're not going to be NFL quarterbacks. So those guys are going to stay in college and make that guaranteed money as college starters, because if they go to NFL, they're going to be 5th, 6th round draft picks. They're not going to make as much. I think Belichick's going to do great with the salary cap. I just wonder how he's going to do with people, kids. Yeah. Any more questions on that?
No.
Revenue sharing, you say, well, how can they afford to give $20 million? Well, if you look here, Ohio State in their athletic department made over $279 million last year. Texas made over $279 million. I think there was 5 programs that made over $250 million. So they're healthy because a lot of TV money, that's not taking into account booster club money, donations, student fees. That is taking into account apparel. So, and that's so much money's coming in. So the players getting the percentage they're getting at $20 million is far less. In the NFL, the players get 51% of the gross revenue. In the college ranks, you're talking about it's not 25% of the total allotment. So they're getting a lot less, and the programs can't afford to do it. Some people have said, oh, they're going to cut out swimming, they're going to cut out volleyball. Some of that was just stuff they were saying to try to push it back.
All aren't created equal, Mr. Downs. All are not created equal, because those revenues that you're showing, though true, don't show what the expense of those programs are.
That's true. They're not all created equal, and it is going to create. There is going to be, I think, it's going to be some thinning out, because some programs obviously have, just like programs, some make more money. Some, let's say Texas A&M, Texas, they have oil money that other programs don't have. Alabama does not have a huge economic base like some other programs do. So that is going to affect, and some schools are not making money. They're not in the black. There's definitely athletic programs that struggle. I was at East Tennessee State, and our budget, we needed to play a Power 5 school to get $1 million because that was like a third of our budget. If we didn't play that game, we were borrowing money each year. But
and additionally, the 20 million. So all the additional scholarships that he mentioned and the additional sports, up to $2.5 million of new scholarships has to be taken off the top of that rev share before you start sharing it. So if you are a school and you literally spend $2.5 million more in new scholarships, then you only have $18.5 million for your rev share.
Correct. The question,
and I don't know if Ken said anything before I got on. Just real quick. So I'm deputy athletic director. I've worked in college athletics for 30 years. I've been a Division II athletic director at an HBCU. I've worked at a FCS school. Started off as an academic advisor at Virginia Tech when Ken was an undergrad. So I've seen a little bit of everything and seen the evolution of this and I've also worked in compliance from the time that student athletes could not have jobs to where we are today.
One thing that nobody talks about anymore, for the most part, is cost of attendance. I don't know where that's going. Has there been any talk about what's going to happen for cost of attendance? Some of these larger universities.
It's going to be different.
Okay,
it's going to be different from school to school, and it's going to be different within schools as well. Yes. Because when you talk about rev share, your kid on your swim team isn't going to get any part of the revenue sharing.
Yeah, so the cost of attendance.
So they may still get cost of attendance and Austin money and some of those other things that have come into play the last few years.
How does this affect Title IX? How is Title IX affected by all of this money and
TBD?
To be determined. Yeah.
There are differing opinions, and there's no legal opinion that has been given definitively. Given where we are in our society, as litigious as things are, to me, that's just the next set of lawsuits.
I have heard a solution, which is not really a solution, but that some athletic programs and the bigger programs may go private equity, and that means that a university would sell their sports licensing rights to a private equity firm. That firm might give them $2-3 billion, and each year give the athletic program maybe 20-25% of the revenue, and that athletic program then would be an outside entity that would be controlling the athletics or controlling football revenue. And
Now
football.
they're the owner. They're the owner.
Correct.
You
And
pretty much
that
bought
way,
a college team, just like you buy
yes,
the Commanders. I got it.
correct. Yep. And they would do that, and that
It's a
would be their
business.
way around Title IX. I don't know if that's going to work, if that model is going to happen. I don't want to see that model happen, but in some ways, some of the boosters are saying, well, if I'm giving this money, I'm not actually getting anything back. They're business people, but as if they become a private equity and they invest this money on this team for $3 billion, then essentially if they can find a way to market and make money, then they are getting something back and they are essentially owning a team. I don't know if it's going to go that way or not, but that was one of the things that I've heard. And it's like, I don't know. So a lot of unknowns in that realm of how to make this work. All right. We talked about a little bit earlier about your market value, how to determine it. Some players overestimate their market value, and that's a bad thing. Just because one guy's getting money doesn't mean you're going to get money. Talk a little bit about inclusive or non-exclusive agreements. Sometimes you sign an agreement with a collective, it's exclusive. Some of it's exclusive. And likewise with marketing reps, negotiation with NIL vendors. I had to deal with some contracts and learn. Like my son signed a car deal one time, and the guy said, "We'll give you $15,000." And really, the dollar amount didn't matter. It's really about how much per signature. It's like one signature. Are you going to give me $7.50 a signature, or $10 per signature, or 20? Those things matter. And then, of course, we talk about negotiating with collectives. I do believe most parents, if they can find a reputable person, marketing rep, to deal with these things, because it is awkward sitting with a coach talking money in this sense. And most people, it's an awkward situation. And if you can get an outside entity to do it well for you, that would represent you in the right way, I would do it versus doing it yourself. Negotiating with vendors or negotiating with collectives all by yourself. I was pushed into it. I've done it. I tried to turn it over to somebody else. I'm still there, but I would definitely recommend finding someone to at least advise you in some of the negotiate or to redline the contract after you get it. My AD friend, have you had any dealings with parents negotiating with collectives?
Yes. And all of them aren't good outcomes. They're not good outcomes.
It's tough. It's
yeah.
tough because
and I would say, again, in my 30 years, I know hundreds and hundreds of student athletes and parents who signed, national letters of intent when that was still in play, and scholarship offers, et cetera, that they've not read.
Yes.
If there is ever a time where you need to read every single word of every single thing you think you might be about to sign, you have to read everything, because you're going to be held to the document you signed. And like Gary was talking about, there are people who will do things for free now for future attachment to your student athlete. Be very careful about that, because there are some early in the NIL period, there are some of those agreements that were put forth to students and their parents, and they signed them for guaranteed money in the future. And there was no out if that future didn't happen for that young person. You still owe these people money that your student wasn't earning. Mm-hmm. So be very careful.
There was a linebacker at a school that thought he was going to be a free agent. He took one of these agreements. They gave him, let's say, $500,000, and this agreement said if he didn't get drafted, didn't make any money, he didn't owe him anything. However, if he did make the team, they get 15% of all his salaries up until $50 million. So they gave him $500,000, but now they're going to get 15% of every contract dollar he gets until he gets to the $50 million mark. And so it's like, wow, why did he take that? Well, he took it, this deal he signed, I want to say even during the NIL era, he took the deal, maybe didn't know he signed it. Now they're arguing in court trying to get out of it. I know there's one gentleman from Georgia that signed a similar deal, and he's arguing in a law battle trying to get out. And this guy was a first-round draft pick, and he signed a deal, got about $400,000, and now he's having to give 15% of his first-round money. And that company has made their money back already. So I'd be very careful. Contracts and deliverables, real quick. What are they promising me? How much? When do I get it? How much? How often? How long? And then the deliverables, what do I have to do? Do I have to make videos? Do I have to make pictures? Do I have to post bios? Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're having to post every week during the season, and I'm having to show up for something for 2 hours, it can be overburdensome because you want to keep the main thing. And if your NIL marketing business is taking over your life, it's too much. This is an agreement. This is a generic. If you have a chance to take a picture of it, they're online. I have several. I don't want to disclose ours, but it is very legal. And it's a lot of legal jargon and terms that you're not going to be familiar with. So it'd be best to find someone to redline it for you. Let's see. I talked about that, creating an LLC. Portal, real quick. 40% of players that get in the portal never get out. They get stuck there. I think there's 8,000 players in the portal now. Some players are not going in the portal willingly. They're getting pushed out, being forced to go in the portal. Sometimes players are going in the portal hoping to move up. I always say, if you can, I know it's against the rules, but you want to look before you leap. If you don't, there's somebody you can call to go check with someone to find out if you got a market value. If you want to leave somewhere, because you get in that portal, you walk away from guaranteed money or scholarship, and I know kids that are sitting at home right now. They left an opportunity, and I know other kids that were forced out. Sometimes quarterbacks, there's no opportunity. You need to go somewhere else. It's a tool, but that needs to be managed very carefully because a lot of people walk and they're on the streets. My final tips are keep the main thing, play ball, be productive, get your academics. In this high school part, continuous improvement, building your athleticism, your skill level. No buts. No buts are, you don't want the high school coach saying but about your academics or your character. Likewise, if you're in college, you don't want somebody saying but to you, to an NFL scout. He's this, but he can't do that. But he can't do this, you're bad character. The other thing is your highlights and information up to date. They need to pop. Put your best things front and best foot forward. Getting in front of coaches, communication. Parents are great, but kids need to be able to speak for themselves. Parents, you can practice grilling your kid on information. Your kid needs to know where you work. So when he's talking to the coach, oh, my mom's a school teacher. My dad works at the sanitation or whatever. He needs to be able to communicate. You can practice at home, making eye contact and a strong handshake. And then if you are fortunate enough that you're doing well enough on the field and you get NIL, I would say build a team around yourself. A good marketing team, a management team, but you got to stay in the middle of it because you are the CEO. It's your brand and your image, mom and dad. You got to stay involved in that to watch out for your young person and finding good advisors and good mentors. That's all I got. If you got any questions, I'm still here.
Any other questions? Appreciate you guys for coming out tonight. And just hearing this is a very important subject matter because of the fact that it's very different from when I was in school and when I came out and being recruited, when Gary was being recruited, and all those other pieces, because you are, it's a different world now. And one of the things that we didn't touch on as much is this, that you think about what now the new landscape of football, man, Gary, you talked about this earlier, is that unless you're a top 50, top 100 athlete in any of the aspects, you're not going to get that recruiting element that you used to get, because these colleges are recruiting from those smaller areas, those smaller colleges. And what student athletes have to now realize is that Division III, you're getting 80% in financial aid, but then we have to find out how you're going to pay for the other 20%. So you have to find ways in trying to educate parents and students on a savings plan, or how to save money, or ways to find money to help that individual go to get into those areas. It's going to change the landscape of a lot of sports, and being able to do that. But really appreciate you guys, Dorita, lending your hand, Gary, being the keynote speaker, and Troy, adding the value of some of your questions that you have, and Troy, who I've seen coach. But I'm going to share my website, my slide deck that I have. It has a lot of some of the other components on where to get some of the apps to help guide, in some of the other area. Big Future, the Common app, in which a lot of now athletes are going to have to do, because of the fact of trying to fit into those other pockets of money, and being able to fill in those other pieces. And then learn, estimate, student aid, VASFA, and the community college transfer programs. Those pieces, how looking at some of these kids who are looking at when they go to a junior college or to a junior college to get their grades up. So it's a different fit.
We did not bring up the fact that the rule just came in. If you go to junior college out of high school, your clock does not start. So you essentially can go to JUCO for 2 years, get an AA, and it's like you got an AA, but you can enter a 4-year institution and your clock is not started. That's the new rule, so it's what it is. But it's a tool as well.
And that's a totally different avenue now for athletes that in the past, now you're getting now you're going to have that older kid that's in college. And so so that's going to be interesting in that aspect as well. So that's the biggest thing, as this until the NCAA either gets a handle on all these pieces. And that's the other side, is it's like you talk about, Gary, is how do you financially fit these individuals as well? How do you get these individuals who are not used to having or this money? So now financial literacy is a large part of the NCAA as well, and the responsibility that is needed as well.
The schools are doing some, the schools are doing a fair job of educating. I see the biggest problem is when a player is finished his academics and athletics, there's not enough mentorship from the athletic department to help a player transition out of ball into corporate life. That's the biggest problem I deal with right now. Players that are done, how do they transition into a normal career? They're just not. They haven't been groomed. They haven't been prepared for that part yet.
And that's where, that 1%, because still only 1% still going to the NFL.
Correct.
So how do they continue that? As we know, how do you continue those pieces in place? And then what's in place to, when you think about work-based learning, and, what the NFL has done, and with the trust, more or less, is they've created these programs that allow these kids to transition, because it's only 2.5, 3 years is the life expectancy of a playing career, and so those pieces are necessary. So, and Dorita, from your view, from your lens, what, and you may or may not know this answer, or what does that look like from the position that you're in, that can help these athletes that aren't prepared to go out of from, and we've seen it, from high school.
Part of why I smiled when you're talking about that is that programming has been a part of Power 5 institutions for a long time. Ken, I mean, you remember when you were in school, we did some things at Virginia Tech back in the 90s.
Yeah.
The trouble we're having at this point in time is getting student athletes to show up for that.
To do it. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we'll have programming talking about, you know, financial literacy, bringing people in from Merrill Lynch and other companies to talk about how to manage some things. And who we have showing up is the girls from the golf team, the guys from, you know,
you're right.
This team or that team. It's not the student athletes who are going to be earning large amounts of money now or in the very near future.
Yep.
And then we get to exit interviews and they say, oh, I wish I had, you know, learned this, or wish somebody, and we're like, and remember that opportunity that was, you know, X, Y, and Z. Our football team, our football program does a pretty good job of culling some things out and doing them just for the football team to try to help with that. We have done financial literacy with women's basketball on the practice court. You don't have to go anywhere. We're going to bring them to you. And they still don't want to listen.
Yeah.
She's speaking the truth. She's speaking the truth. I was at
that's
Georgia.
One of the things. And again, having started off, as you know, Ken, doing academic advising and life skills, as we called it back in the 90s, like that's always been something that I've tried to, you know, ensure that young people do. I mean, some of Ken's teammates still sending me resumes, telling us, get this. But, but that's one of the pieces that, again, I think is a place where parents can help to know on the front end what the school offers, where your son or daughter goes, and to make sure you are pushing your son and daughter to use everything that is available to them at that institution while they're there.
Yeah, it's true. When I was visiting Georgia, Kirby, they have a thing called the Georgia Way, and it's a great program. You get all kinds of internships and connections and networking, but not enough players will do it. And it's not mandatory. And I think Dabo at Clemson sort of makes it mandatory. And so his players do it. And maybe it's some of the players he has want to do it anyway, but it's not mandatory in most. And it is, you're right, there's definitely a gap.
And you get major pushback. When we first got to the Alston payments coming into play, like that was one of the things we talked about here at Arkansas, was tying it to what we call being Razorback ready, which meant having a LinkedIn page, having a resume done, and some of those kinds of things, at least trying to tie something to it with skills and exposures that we know they'll need, that they don't want at this point in time, but we know they'll need them. But you get pushback on that. You know, you have a kid transfer from another institution and they say, well, we didn't have to do any of this to get that money at, you know, X school. And again, it's not a high bar, but it is things that we know you need. So we're trying to, you know, force some of it into your, you know, into your sphere. So,
well, thank you all.
Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all.
Gary, and good luck, everyone. In the
Thank
process. Great seeing you, Ken.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. January 22nd, our next opportunity. February 12th, January 22nd, we'll be talking about two-year college. And then February 12th, we'll be speaking on finding your fit scholarships and financing your plan. Again, hopefully we can join you. Join us in the next session, January 22nd. And then any questions, there's all my contact.